Xi Jinping has made his choice. He's not trying to save China's future. He's sacrificing it. The birth rate has collapsed. The population is aging, shrinking, dying. Entire towns are vanishing. Millions of workers are gone. And for the first time in centuries, China isn't growing. It's retreating. But here's what makes this collapse different. It's not an accident. It's the plan. Xi knows the numbers. He knows China is heading towards a cliff. But instead of slamming the brakes, he's tightening control, draining resources from the young and the poor, and locking the country into a managed decline, one that protects the party at the cost of the people. What's coming isn't just a slowdown, it's a survival pyramid. And 1 billion people are on the bottom. This is the brutal truth behind China's collapse, and the cold logic behind letting it happen. The numbers don't lie. In 2025, China recorded just 7.92 million births, the lowest since the 1700s, when the entire population was only 150 million. Deaths now outnumber births by more than 3 million every year. The fertility rate has crashed below 1.0. Each new generation will be half the size of the last. That's not decline, that's demographic collapse. Meanwhile, 300 million Chinese are already over 60. By 2035, there will be 400 million. China's working-age population has lost 40 million people in 3 years. Factories can't find labor, and every year more retire than enter the workforce. The math is impossible. In 2000, 10 workers supported each retiree. By 2050, 2 workers per retiree. Pension funds are running dry. A third of provincial systems already operate in the red. National analysts warn the entire fund could be depleted by the early 2030s. Beijing knows these numbers. They've known for years. So why haven't they fixed it? Because Xi Jinping isn't trying to fix it. He's trying to survive it. From day one, Xi made it clear the party's supremacy is non-negotiable. Over the last decade, he's tightened control, silenced dissent, and enshrined himself as the most powerful leader since Mao. Party first, people second. Military spending, rising every year. Internal security budgets, same. Social spending, constrained by debt. Local governments are cutting services, slashing healthcare, not even paying teachers on time. Xi's answer isn't welfare expansion, it's tighter narrative control. Campaigns urging people to eat bitterness for the national good. State media glorifying austerity. Reviving Mao-era slogans about self-reliance. Translation: get ready to suffer. We saw this during COVID-19. At first, zero COVID seemed to prioritize saving lives. But by late 2022, the economy was collapsing. Mass protests erupted. Xi lifted all restrictions overnight. No transition, no time to vaccinate the vulnerable elderly. The virus tore through China like wildfire. Hospitals overwhelmed. Crematoriums running 24/7. Pharmacies sold out in hours. Rural areas, packed with unvaccinated elderly, limited medical infrastructure, were devastated. Estimated 1.87 million Chinese died, mostly elderly. Officially, Beijing reported tens of thousands. Censors silenced grievers. Reports of packed morgues were scrubbed. The message was unmistakable. When forced to choose, Xi sacrificed the vulnerable to save the economy. The party's image of control was preserved, even if it meant accepting mass death. That was a preview. What Xi's planning now is far more calculated. Beijing knows China can't sustain 1.4 billion people at prosperity. The resources aren't there. The growth isn't there. The workers aren't there. Xi's answer? China must shrink to survive. Not 1.4 billion scraping by. Instead, 800 million, maybe 400 million. Productive, high-skilled, loyal citizens, not a bloated mass of dependents. For centuries, Chinese leaders boasted about population size. Mao proclaimed, the most important thing is to be strong. With strength, one can conquer others. Now, that size is a liability. Xi is redefining strength by quality of workforce, not quantity. Triage on a civilization scale. The state focuses resources on select segments. Young, educated, skilled, healthy, loyal. Everyone else is on their own. How do you shrink deliberately? Let nature and economics do the work. Birth rates are falling. Xi doesn't push them lower. Declines happen organically. Life expectancy gains stall for the have-nots. Higher death rates among elderly and sick do the rest. Healthcare spending. In 2022, it accounted for 7.05% of GDP. Rural clinics, underfunded. Small-town hospitals, lacking equipment. People in the countryside can't afford chronic disease treatment. They go without medicine, dying earlier than with proper care. Urban migrants lack insurance. They work jobs nobody wants. Construction, delivery, cleaning, with no safety net. Get sick, lose work, age out, nowhere to turn. The state leaves them to fend for themselves. Meanwhile, Xi pours investment into high-tech hubs, semiconductors, AI, aerospace, electric vehicles, courting top scientists, building innovation districts in Shenzhen, Shanghai, and Beijing. A semiconductor fab contributes more to GDP than 1,000 workshops, employing only hundreds of engineers. Xi aims to maximize output per citizen. Smaller population capable of sustaining a large economy and military. Traditional industries and less productive regions left behind. Northeast provinces, Heilongjiang, Jilin, and Liaoning. Young populations draining away. Economies declining. Xi hasn't prioritized rescue. The message: move south, join the modern economy if you can. If you can't, you're on your own. Interior provinces like Gansu are sacrificed to shrinkage, losing population yearly as deaths outnumber births, and youth flee. The government isn't reversing it. The future lies in megacity clusters, not the rural hinterland. Xi's strategy: don't pour water on barren soil. Channel resources into segments that bolster power. High-tech workers, loyal cadres, educated youth as soldiers or innovators. Strategic coastal cities driving commerce. Those get nurtured and protected. Everyone else? Forgotten and fading. So who exactly gets left behind? The list is longer and darker than you think. But before we get into that, we need you to do something. If this kind of hard-hitting geopolitical analysis is what you're here for, hit that subscribe button, because what comes next? The cold breakdown of exactly who Xi is willing to sacrifice is going to shock you. Here's the truth. The elderly bear the cruelest brunt. They're retiring into a system unprepared to support them. Average state pension? Barely $30 to $50 monthly, not even indexed to inflation. Those funds may vanish entirely by 2035. Healthcare for seniors is equally grim. Geriatric care is severely underdeveloped. Most cities lack proper facilities for dementia patients or hospice. Many elderly have no children nearby. Some lost their only child to accidents or illness. Others have kids who migrated to coastal cities for work and can't return. They find themselves alone in crumbling villages or urban slums. Limited savings evaporating with medical bills, rising medicine prices, no support network left. Reports emerge of elderly villagers taking their own lives rather than becoming burdens. Others refuse treatment for treatable conditions, cancer, heart disease, because their families can't afford thousands in hospital fees. As the state retreats, such brutal choices become normalized. Retirement ages rise to 63 to 65, but for those already in their 70s facing chronic illness, more work simply isn't possible. This generation sacrificed everything. They toiled through Mao's Great Leap Forward. They obeyed the one-child policy, giving up the large families they wanted. Now they're being left to die quietly in corners the party has forgotten. The rural poor missed China's wealth boom entirely. Hundreds of millions subsist on small plots or scrape by on seasonal migrant work, earning $200 to $300 monthly. Xi declared extreme poverty eliminated in 2020 by moving people into basic concrete apartments and giving them monthly stipends. But most still lack good schools, health care, or stable jobs. Young people fled these villages years ago, chasing factory work in Shenzhen or Guangzhou. What remains? Elderly farmers over 60, a few left behind children raised by grandparents, abandoned homes with caved-in roofs, fields going wild with weeds. The party offers propaganda about rural revitalization and occasional showcase projects. A new road here, irrigation canal there, but no systemic change that would integrate rural citizens into modern prosperity. These people produce minimal GDP value. Subsistence farming contributes almost nothing to national output. When budgets tighten, rural areas lose every time. Agriculture subsidies remain a token. Rural clinics lack even basic antibiotics or diagnostic equipment. Schools have one teacher for multiple grades. The youth who grow up here are functionally unemployable in high-tech sectors. They're expected to quietly fade. Home villages will become ghost towns. Those who remain will subsist until they can't anymore, then die without troubling anyone. Even in gleaming cities, millions of migrant workers live crammed 8 to a dormitory room without legal urban residency. They're the delivery drivers flooding streets on electric scooters, the construction workers who built those glittering towers but can't afford to live in them, factory hands, street cleaners. No health insurance, no job security. Savings may be a few thousand yuan that evaporate with one medical emergency. The real estate crash wiped out construction jobs overnight. Developers halted thousands of projects, stranding workers without pay for months of labor. Xi's government offered no bailout, no unemployment insurance, just suggestions to return to hometowns that have nothing for them. This includes educated but underemployed youth. The college graduates with engineering or business degrees now delivering takeout because white-collar hiring froze. They're disillusioned, stuck, watching their futures dissolve. Some lie flat, refusing to participate in the rat race. Others rot, their slang for giving up entirely. The chronically ill face impossible choices. China's insurance covers maybe 50 to 70% of costs for serious illness. The remaining 30 to 50%? Bankrupting for average families. Cancer patients routinely stop chemotherapy after a few rounds. Families can't sustain $10,000 to $20,000 in treatment costs. Diabetics in poor rural counties ration insulin, taking half doses to make supplies last. Meanwhile, wealthy urbanites fly to Singapore or South Korea for cutting-edge treatment. The gap in care is medieval. As the population ages, chronic disease explodes. By 2035, about 174.89 million Chinese will have diabetes. Tens of millions more with heart disease, stroke survivors needing long-term care, dementia patients requiring supervision. The state isn't building infrastructure to handle this. No massive expansion of nursing homes, no hospice network, no home healthcare systems. Survival of the fittest. Those who can afford private care might live to 85 to 90. Those who can't will die at 65 to 70 from entirely treatable conditions. Entire regions face abandonment. Elite coastal metros, Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Hangzhou, will remain wealth and innovation centers. Xi ensures they get infrastructure investment, research funding, talent recruitment programs. But interior provinces? Heilongjiang in the northeast has lost over 6 million people in the last decade. Median age pushing 45, towns with more retirees than workers. Factories shuttered, young people long gone to find work in Guangdong and Chengdu. The government isn't reversing this. If anything, policy accelerates it. High-speed rail connects megacities but bypasses dying industrial towns. Investment flows to innovation hubs in Yangtze's River Delta, not to the Rust Belt Liaoning. We're witnessing the formation of two Chinas. One hypermodern, AI labs, electric vehicle factories, semiconductor fabs. Citizens earning $30,000 to $50,000 yearly with access to world-class hospitals and universities. The other, decaying. Depopulated counties where average income is $2,000 to $3,000. Hospitals lack MRI machines. Schools can't afford computers. Geographic sacrifice at civilizational scale. The party writing off entire provinces as non-contributors to the future. This isn't genocide, it's something more insidious. No camps, no mass atrocities. What's happening is calculated neglect. People allowed, even encouraged, to die through strategic inaction. Social Darwinism under technocratic governance. The strong thrive, the weak wither. The state professes sympathy while withholding help. This is harder to spot and easier to deny. A pension fund bankruptcy doesn't make headlines. A lonely old man dying in a village doesn't spark outrage. A diabetic worker without insulin. Silent deaths, multiplied by millions over years, nation-scale disaster. Lives lost through policy choices prioritizing other goals. The party can spin this as inevitable development costs. If challenged, they point to token programs. But truth lies in what they don't do. Safety nets unfunded, regions unrescued, data unpublished. For those suffering, the effect mirrors overt atrocity, dying before their time while the People's Republic looks away. So, what does Xi think he'll get for all this suffering? In his gamble, a smaller China can actually be a more powerful China, provided those who remain are the right people, loyal, technically skilled, concentrated in the prime of life. Think of it as pruning a tree. Cut away the weak branches so the core can flourish. If China's population falls to below 1 billion by mid-century, some projections suggest it could dip to around 800 million by 2100. Xi wants that 800 million to be as productive and unified as 1.4 billion once were. This means intensifying investment in each citizen's human capital, pouring resources into education in key subjects, promoting STEM fields, instilling fierce nationalism in the youth. The goal is a populace that is both highly capable and politically reliable. A formidable combination. On the economic front, a leaner but meaner China would rely on technology and automation to compensate for fewer hands. Xi's push in robotics and AI is partly to address the labor shortage. Factories are increasingly adopting robots to replace aging and scarce workers. In agriculture, machines and drones are intended to supplant the young farmers who aren't there. The dream is that GDP can keep growing, or at least remain high, even as the headcount shrinks, because productivity per worker leaps upward. Beijing is calculating that by maximizing per capita output, the total economy can still rival that of the United States or other powers. Chinese economists have argued that population decline won't matter if each person is twice as productive. That's a big if, but that's the target. Militarily, a population of 1 billion or 400 million matters less today than quality of technology and training. Modern warfare is fought with drones, missiles, and cyber tools, not sheer masses of infantry. Xi is acutely aware of this. He's undertaken a sweeping modernization of the People's Liberation Army. Advanced fighter jets, navy carriers, hypersonic missiles, a growing nuclear arsenal. Such a military doesn't need endless cannon fodder. It needs a smaller core of professional, tech-savvy soldiers and officers. Even with fewer young people available, China could maintain a highly potent military force. The strategy is to fight and win with quality over quantity, mirroring the demographic shift. Society-wise, a colder, more survivalist China likely means a jettisoning of traditional values. Filial piety, children caring for parents, may erode when children are too few or simply unable. Community solidarity might weaken as everyone is told to look out for themselves. The China that Xi is cultivating is one where hardship is normalized and even glorified. State media celebrates stoic sacrifice. youths volunteering to work in remote poor areas, soldiers stationed in barren outposts with minimal comforts. The subtext is clear. The new China must be tough and disciplined, not soft and caring. Citizens are being psychologically conditioned for a more Spartan existence. Work long hours, have fewer children, expect less help from the state. Inequality, while officially decried, is likely to grow in this scenario. The elite core will enjoy very high living standards and advanced healthcare, perhaps even life extension technologies in the future, while many others struggle. We might witness almost two separate demographic trajectories within China. Wealthy urbanites who have fewer kids but live long and healthy lives thanks to top-notch medical care, and the poor who have few kids and also die relatively young due to a lack of care. The life expectancy difference between regions and classes could become stark. To the party, that might be acceptable collateral damage as long as those elites keep China's global status rising. But there's one problem with sacrificing 1 billion people. They might not go quietly. Xi Jinping's grand bargain? Sacrifice 1 billion people now to save the regime and strengthen the remainder? Is not without peril. The human cost will be enormous. How many dying grandparents, jobless youths, or abandoned towns can China endure before the social fabric frays? Historically, China has seen dynasties fall when hardship became too widespread. Peasant rebellions, civil unrest, collapse. These often followed severe famine or inequality. The Communist Party justifies its monopoly on power by claiming to deliver stability and prosperity. If large swaths of the population feel only misery and abandonment, the risk of instability grows. Will the millions who were effectively consigned to an early death accept their fate quietly? Or will desperation turn into dissent? Xi is likely counting on a combination of propaganda, nationalism, and brute force to manage discontent. Surveillance technology in China is unparalleled. The state can often detect and quash organized opposition before it starts. The party may succeed in convincing many people that their personal sacrifice is for the greatness of the nation, a sort of martyrdom for China's future. But it's a dangerous game. Despair can be volatile. One spark, perhaps a local incident of injustice or an economic shock, could ignite anger in those who have nothing left to lose. Even a smaller China in absolute numbers will still have hundreds of millions of people. If even a fraction of them rebel against being cast aside, the regime could face chaos. Internationally, a smaller but stronger China will also contend with external pressures. If China's population and economy start shrinking substantially, some observers predict it could become more aggressive while it still has relative strength. Striking out before decline becomes too steep. Indeed, Xi's China has grown more confrontational in recent years, as if aware that a window is closing. The obsession with taking back Taiwan may be partly driven by the sense that demographic and economic peaking means now or never. A war or major conflict, however, could upset all of Xi's careful domestic calculations. It might unite the population in nationalism, or it could wreck the economy and thin the youth even further. In the end, Xi Jinping's legacy will hinge on whether the regime survives the great culling he is overseeing. If he succeeds by the mid-21st century, China could emerge as a uniquely structured superpower, smaller in population than its rivals, yet still commanding immense economic, technological, and military might through its intensive focus on excellence and loyalty. Such a China would be more insular and hardened, having passed through a crucible of demographic pain. It would also be a less pluralistic, less compassionate society, a nation that chose national power over human tenderness. If he fails, however, the very act of letting so many of his people slip away could prove to be the party's undoing. Mass disillusionment, demographic collapse, regional disparities might fragment China or erode the party's authority irreparably. History offers both warnings and hope. Great nations can survive demographic collapse. Look at post-plague Europe or Japan in the 21st century. But great regimes can also fall when they lose the mandate of heaven by inflicting too much suffering. Xi Jinping has made his choice: party over people, control over compassion, survival of the regime at the expense of 1 billion lives. The China that emerges from this crucible will indeed be smaller and colder. Its skylines may still glitter with wealth and technology. Its flag may still wave as a great power on the world stage, but the human cost etched in its shadows will be enormous. Villages emptied, families extinguished, generations never born. These will be the hidden sacrifices laid on the altar of the Communist Party's continuity. The oldest living civilization, once defined by its masses and sages, will become a lean garrison state, defined by its select guardians and their machines. Whether that state can long endure and whether the soul of the nation survives intact remains an open question. The only certainty is that immense suffering lies ahead on the path that Xi has chosen, a path where countless human lives are the price of ambition, and survival is the ultimate ideology. So here's the question we're left with. Can China remain a superpower by becoming smaller and harder? Or will the weight of 1 billion abandoned lives crush the regime that cast them aside? Let us know what you think in the comments. And subscribe to Fall of Nations for more brutal truths about the decline of empires.